So I was just thinking about a conversation I had with Chris Dyer in our last video. If you haven't seen the last video where I talked to Chris Dyer about remote work, relocation, and how that could possibly affect the real estate market, I would highly encourage you to go back and watch that if you're at all curious about remote work in general, relocating, and how that's going to affect the real estate market. So I wanted to follow up with this video with some reflections on remote work, relocation, and how that might affect real estate. Now, a lot of you probably live where you were born. Maybe that's in a big city, maybe it's not. But going back to the history of the big city, that was the nucleus of civilization. A big city is where you had to go for work. Or a bigger city than what you lived in, right? There's always these suburban areas and there's always this central hub where people have to commute into work. Well, that's all changing now because of remote work. A lot of that had to do with the pandemic. So the first time I ever heard of remote work was probably around 2004. And I heard of this thing called the ROWE, R-O-W-E, results only work environment, that proposed a completely flexible schedule, optional meetings, optional time spent in the office. And at that time, I was employed in the office and I thought, wow, this is just mind-blowing. So I did propose it to my employer, who of course at that time was like, no way. I can't trust my employees. How can they be managed? And things like this, common objections that we are still here today. Chris Dyer's company, People G2, has been remote since 2009. So for 13 years, that's quite a while. And Chris was explaining that there had been, some progression over those 13 years, but really during the pandemic, people were forced to work remotely so that, obviously everyone wasn't getting sick. So, after the last 18 to 24 months of basically the pandemic helping to demonstrate that remote was possible for a lot of jobs out there, and obviously there's certain jobs that just can't be remote, but a lot of jobs that involve, sitting in the cubicle certainly can be remote. So we've seen definitely an upswing in remote work. So what does this mean for you if you're a remote worker, or even not? It means that while Chris indicated that, there's not this huge migration just yet of people leaving big cities and moving out to less populated areas, but slowly we are seeing that, people are migrating out of states like California, for example, and New York, and they're moving to places like Idaho, Texas, Tennessee, places like this. Why? Because the cost of living is lower, and oftentimes people are finding a better quality of life. They're finding a community that makes more sense for them. And, a lot of us, I know, have had the good fortune of being born in a really great place. And that's awesome, but it's not really the norm. Most people are, born in places where they don't necessarily feel a part of the community, and they want to move. But until now, really, moving was much more difficult because then you'd have to, of course, search for a job, search for an apartment or a home, things like that. So there was certainly some complication in the past with just moving wherever you thought you wanted to live. Now we're seeing more and more people do that. Now, how does that affect real estate, right? Well, the more people become remote, the more people are going to probably think, can I find a better quality of life elsewhere? And they're going to relocate. And they're probably going to mostly relocate from places that are already expensive to places they perceive as being less expensive. So this is obviously going to drive up the cost of housing in these less populated areas. We're already seeing that. So if you were to go look up properties in Laramie, Wyoming, for example, on Zillow, you'd probably think to yourself, wow, I thought this was going to be a lot cheaper. That's because we're already seeing people migrate from larger populated cities into smaller, less populated towns in hopes for a more like-minded community and a higher quality of life. So if you've ever thought of relocating, you may want to think about that and make a decision sooner rather than later, because while maybe right now, the properties you're looking at in some other state are lower, I wouldn't expect that to last over the next 5 to 10 years. So if you have any questions about relocation, I am totally happy to help, whether that's you want to relocate here to my state of Colorado, or you just want some help dealing with the psychological aspects of moving. I've moved both out of country and I've moved out of state twice, so I have some experience in regards to this. I know what it's like to leave family behind. I know what it's like to leave your safe community of friends behind, and all those sort of components that make moving out of country or state a little more daunting. So if you have any desire whatsoever or any thoughts about relocating, please feel free to reach out. And let's keep the dialogue open. And I am here to help people find places, find a home they love to live in, find a community that they love to live in. That's my mission in that. So let me ask you, are you currently living where you want to live, or are you, like most people, probably living within just a few miles of where you were born? Your reasoning for that might be that maybe hard to find a job out of state, you don't want to leave family, you don't want to leave friends and things like that. Well, I know that parts involving leaving friends and family and a life that you're used to behind is pretty difficult, but these days with remote work soon becoming the majority of the workforce, it's much more possible to move about the nation and even the world with some complications. So in the United States, we have so many options on places to live, so many different communities, terrain, that you can live wherever you want if you can acquire a remote job, or maybe you already have one. If you are a remote worker, you're in a very good situation. You have the benefit of being able to move almost wherever you want, depending, of course, on the restrictions your company has in place. You may have to stick to a certain region, not sure, but the possibility and the possibility of finding a place you truly want to live is becoming more and more possible. And if you're looking for a new state, a new town, please feel free to reach out. Hopefully today this video has added some value to your life. If you found it interesting, if you learned something new today, please like and subscribe, share it with your friends, and if there's anything you'd like me to discuss, just write me a comment. I'm happy to listen. I'm happy to talk about what you want me to talk about. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.